Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to another Division video on the chopping block. So we're going to be looking at Tom Clancy's The Division 2, and so far, all of the new, I would say, updates and news that's actually been coming out. So first of all, my last video, I talked about something that I felt was very important in all of those announcements. They talked about a PTS, and I strongly believe that they need to try their best, this is the development teams and the decision makers, to have that PTS available not only to PC, but also consoles. And I also want to go ahead and apologize to some of you, my viewers, Guard and the rest. I know you guys have been not following the Division 2 as well. And so when I made that video, you were like, what's going on? And so I didn't even explain much at the beginning of that video. So I'll try my best to give a quick snapshot just in case anybody maybe catches my video in the recommendations and are wondering what the heck it is I'm talking about. So in the past few weeks, we've seen the developers of Massive actually start to make mention of their approach to delivering what it is that they're going to be bringing in the next few months in terms of the Division new content. They've basically said it's an update. They've also talked about why they didn't do a lot of the state of the games because they felt like they needed to have more concrete stuff to provide to us and to show people before they started doing some more presentations. So from then on, they said that they were going to start bringing more updates, which will showcase and start to discuss a little bit more about the process of what it is they were doing. We will culminate in a PTS that they wanted to deploy on PC. So that's pretty much what's going on in the shortest possible way. Now, in more details, if you want to know, they really want to make some specialization reworks, which is basically going to change the entire, workings of the game. That's basically what it is. I don't think it's something that is really going to be huge or something that's really going to be big. Now, here is my question. Because right now, I think that little magic that the Division had on a lot of players seems to be, somewhat becoming fragile. And the reason I say that is because we've had way too long to go play and kind of experience and taste what other games are providing out there. And it seems like some of y'all are starting to say some really, really strange stuff that I would not have thought you would say in the comment section. I'm looking at you, Cursed. I am looking at you because I saw some really dedicated Division agents say some really weird stuff like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be enough to bring me back. I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? You grinded this game like crazy. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just really surprised that, many players are now anticipating a lot of these other games that are coming out there. Now, note, these are not the players that are saying that these games are going to kill the Division. That's a whole different kind of conversation. And I've had that conversation a lot of times. People have said these things about other games, but it appears that every time people say those things about other games, they jinx those games. Oh, Cyberpunk is going to kill it. It didn't do anything. It killed its own self, or basically, let's not say it killed itself. It shot itself in the foot and it hasn't even released. And by the way, I'll be bringing some more Cyberpunk content here in a bit. I bought 2 copies of the game. I like CD Projekt Red, and I know they made a mistake. As long as they're able to correct that mistake and do right by the community, they're fine with me. But they have to do right by the community, and I think they will. But another note, that's another note, and let's just stick with this conversation for now, which is this new update going to be enough to bring players back? And I think there will be one thing that really judges how the answer to that is going to go. I don't want to sit here and say the answer is yes or no, because it really does depend on the nature of this update or content piece that they're bringing. Now, I've seen terminology used. This is going to be our most ambitious update. I don't even know. I think Warlords of New York was a really ambitious update, in my opinion. I mean, I was like, they brought a new map to the game that is now currently playable. This is something that they did not necessarily do in the Division 1. Division 1, yes, there was a Dark Zone expansion, which was also a map increase. We did see and benefit from that, but Warlords of New York was an entire map increase in that sense. Now, I think if they really want to say, okay, this is an ambitious project that they're working on, then we're more than likely in a place where we're going to be saying, well, what does it necessarily entail? Their vagueness is basically telling us one of two things. They're kind of vague about things at Massive. They'll just be like, oh, this is something that we're working on. And I understand the vagueness is necessary to allow for them to still be able to, within their own internal workings, have some level of, mea culpa. Like if they don't go promise things that they can't deliver. That's basically what I think that does and helps them for. And so if they're going to say this is a very ambitious update, which I think I understand what it is that they're trying to do, because Frederick Thailander pulled stuff like this off in the game, and the team have pulled stuff like this even in the past games. The only problem is this one just took too long for them to actually do it from, the last update that we got all the way through now. And so what it is that I think that they're trying to do is they're trying to invert the meta of the entire game. You see, they don't want to take the gear sets and necessarily tweak and change them that much. I don't think there's enough time and enough manpower and enough focus to be able to do something of that nature, which is basically going to be a free update. So in my opinion, I think they've basically focused and highlighted the one proxy that in a sense did need improvement. Everybody had talked about the specializations for the longest time, and you're going to take that and you're going to tweak that in order for that to influence the way the game works. So specializations are getting a huge rework, and I don't know how that's going to pretty much play out in terms of other content pieces in the game. Now, some people have said this may be something that affects the PvE in a negative way, and in a sense even causes more problems in PvP. Hence, even though they're making these changes, they're going to have to also go into the gear system, into some of our core mechanics, and eventually get to the point where they have to make those changes as well to be able to accommodate for this kind of new shift or paradigm shift in the entire game. Many times this is a good thing. It keeps the game fresh. It allows for people to be able to come into the game and experience the game in a new way. But these kinds of updates were not necessarily done after a very long time. Now, here is what I think could be a way that mitigates this, and this could be something that mimics the patch 1.8 type update that we got in the Division 1. And I think that's a way that they can bring in gear sets that in a sense allow for the maximization of these so-called specialization changes. In that way, people are looking for new gear sets and maybe new brand sets that are going to help them be able to enjoy these new aspects. And then at the same time, they're going to be in a position where, they're able to make these changes and have them not necessarily affect our regular gear. This is something that's really going to be complex and complicated, but it appears that they may have a formula that they want to go with. That's why they're already talking. So we'll just see how that all works out and how that pans out at the end of the day. But again, if PvP players are looking at this change and saying, okay, this may be something that has me more interested in the PvP, the question is this going to resolve the core issues of PvP? Because for some people, they still understand that, even though they may bring instant med kits, it's not necessarily that system that's making the PvP unenjoyable for them. The answer is very, apparent. I mean, you've been watching the PvP streams and watching, other folks like the Vibe play. He plays PvP very dedicatedly on stream. And so when you just watch sessions and hours of his, gameplay, you're not only going to see that the medkit does, in a sense, hinder some of the fun abilities of PvP. It's just that the mechanics that used to make the PvP much more fun, like from the Division 1, don't necessarily exist in a synergistic way in the Division 2. It wasn't only the medkits that made PvP fun. Are we forgetting that there were other little small talents and perks that you had along the line as well that came with all of that made you as a PvP player in a sense indestructible when you knew how to time your resources properly. So I'm not seeing these medkits as being a solution unless there's some other aspects of the specialization tree that they want to add now to allow for players to be able to spec and pour their resources into to mimic a little bit more of those PvP aspects that made the division fun. This, in my opinion, is probably what's going to help a little bit to kind of push forward the freshness of this new content. So that's one thing to look out for in answering that question. Another thing too is PvE players. How are PvE players going to basically engage this new content? Because, as much as they're talking about all of this specialization reworks, we ask ourselves and say, okay, so if we get the entire meta of the game inverted or flipped, what content are we going to play with it? That's also a very valid question. Now, there's a new game mode. I definitely see that as something that will bring some people to come in and play. Maybe we'll use the new game modes as well as old game modes to farm gear. But the moment we start to all get our gear pieces, maximize our builds, use them to, crush legendary missions and all that, what else is there for PvE players to continue to do? And that's also a very, in my opinion, valid question from my side. I think it's quite simple in a sense. All they probably need to do is just go ahead and fulfill their promise on the legendary missions that still are in the other stronghold. If you have 2 legendary missions now, you have a very high chance of players saying, okay, we have a wider weekly rotation, we have legendary missions that we can speedrun, and ways that we can continue to learn the way these missions, come into light. I think this is something that's good enough for this initial release. Now, even if it doesn't come for this initial release, they've already said that there's more content coming down the road, which then also starts to creep into the timeline of the other video games that have been delayed that are now going to be finding themselves being on the market and on the shelves. So these are very challenging questions to answer, but it will really take a lot of the effort from the developers to basically just say, okay, this is how we want to do this. And then at the end of the day, it's at the discretion of the players, but there has to be that wow factor. It's not just about bringing something new. They really have to do something that really does let the community know, okay, we really want this, which is why I constantly continue to say that I think there's a Division 3 in the works. This is, in my opinion, kind of a way to continue to soothe that relationship with the community. Feels very patch 1.8-esque, and eventually they're probably going to make us a lot more powerful, no doubt. I mean, I know people are probably concerned about PvP and PvE, but you're going to see us get really strong. I think that's where they're going to keep the game, where everyone is just a mercenary by themselves, and then they're going to basically just kind of phase out the Division 2 for a Division 3. Heartland's delayed. I mean, that's its own thing. I get it, but we're more than likely going to be seeing another Division game. I don't know why. My confidence level is starting to get higher and higher. And there are many things I can talk about. But again, I just wanted to focus on this one thing for this video. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you guys in another Division video. If you've been joining my other content pieces, I just want to take the time to say thank you very much for supporting that content. I know it's not the Division, but hey, I'm just enjoying all these other games. And I just thought I'd be sharing them with you guys along the line. All right, I'll get out of your hair. Peace out.